beautiful people. Welcome to Different Angles. It's all about perspective, and I'm Avra.
And my name is Yuko. Today, we are here to share our different perspectives on the topic of habits.
We just want you to know that we don't give any medical advice or diagnosis, and our discussions are based on our own thoughts and our own experiences in life, and we will not be making any reference to any medical facilities.
That's right. So, Avra, today it's a very interesting topic about habits, which I believe a lot of people have been changing their habits since COVID period. Now, tell us about habits itself.
Well, a habit is described as having a regular tendency to practice something when we tend to do the same repetitive action over and over. And in particular, it is a learning mechanism. So it's like you get taught how to become someone who continually does something the same thing without realizing that you're doing it. And once you repeat something of the same context, even if we're doing thinking of something, it can happen. You don't necessarily physically have to be doing something. You could be just mentally doing something. Once it's repetitive, we start to automatically respond with a conscious decision, and this is a habit.
That's right. The truth is just like how we make plans, right? Our core mental competencies play the same fundamental part in making of habits itself too. So our mental mind, works in the same way of helping us to plan as well as helping us to make habits.
Exactly. I mean, it's actually shocking that we spend 43% of our day doing things that we don't even think about. I mean, that's hectic. That's almost half of our day. And that means that almost half of our actions are not actually conscious choices. Wow. I mean, that's quite something to think that you're not consciously making those decisions, and yet they're becoming habits because we're doing them over again. And this is non-conscious mind nudging. It's like giving it a little push all the time, so that the action and the learned behavior becomes a habit.
That's right. You made a very good point, Avra, about consciousness of habits. So there is this distinction between the concept of habits and routines. We know about routines like morning routines, night routines, workout routines, and we also know about habits that we tend to do every single day in life. Now, the difference between habits versus routines is on the line of consciousness. Now, personally, I realized that routine is a conscious effort. It's a series of actions that are regularly followed, while the habit is subconscious. Habit is something that you do without any much thought, it's just done with little effort itself. And so, of course, this makes routine itself very effortful. It's like a planned list of checklists. Yeah, it's a planned checklist for you to tick off and say, okay, I did this today, I did this today, I did this today. But habit, on the other hand, is the behavior as the end result of our routines. That's why we always put rewards. That's why we put rewards to instill and motivate us towards good habits.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you fully. And part of this is all about having order in your life.
That's a good point, having order, because COVID has thrown a lot of people into disorder and chaos. So that's why we all struggle to have habits, and routines to bring us back to either a good habit or like a regular routine. I would share one example on my end.
Yeah.
So during COVID itself, it was really hard to maintain the same routine that I had pre-COVID because of the lockdown, right? So I used to go out for a 1.5 hours workout. Okay, that's a bit long. I know, 1.5 hours workout every morning to just, get myself moving. So that was my routine. But then COVID, this allowed me to go out, and at home with family, it's not possible to do an hour and a half workout. So my routines had to change up, but my habit didn't change. My habit was always to set like aside a cup of latte or a nice cup of drink after every time that I work out. So I will look forward to still exercising. So my routine changed, but my habit didn't.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's also very important. And I think what happens is when we have a habit, we end up having an inner resource. So when there are external factors that give us a situation where we can't continue that good habit, and it could also apply to a bad habit, then we have an inner resource and we start being resourceful in deciding, okay, I still want to exercise. I can't go out, like your example, but I can still exercise. I can still do online yoga. I can still do online gym classes. So we begin to continue our habit with a new resource.
Right. You mentioned a bad habit that kind of instigates you in a bad way. Do we consider them as addictions?
An addiction is something that is a little bit further than a habit. Okay, so we have to differentiate the difference between a habit and an addiction. And I describe this as a push-pull situation where there's manipulation and influence. So maybe we can discuss this a little bit more so I can explain it to you. The push situation is where there is a motivation. So you're motivated to do something. Okay.
Right.
And this is a behavior that forces an individual to satisfy themselves for a need to achieve a goal or a purpose. So it is something that is a push. It's a have to. It's a necessity. I have to do this. Okay. Then you have the other side, which is the pull. And the pull is your influencer. It is your inspirer. It's the part of you where your motivation for the behavior is that as an individual, you feel drawn to doing something. It makes you feel good. It gives you a better feeling. It helps you to attain what you want to do. So I would say the push is a necessity and the pull is the possibility.
Wow. The push is the necessity and the pull is the possibility.
Right.
There's some tweet-worthy words right there.
Yes. So when you get to a situation where you are having a problem and you are asking me the question, can a habit become an addiction? Absolutely. And it becomes an addiction when it becomes an obsession. When you cannot go for any time or period without it. Or you might even find people who have smoking, drinking, eating addictions, who can say, I don't have an addiction because I can stop drinking tomorrow. And they can. They stop drinking tomorrow. And tomorrow is Monday. And by Wednesday, they're drinking again. But they don't see it as an addiction because they can stop for a short while. Addictions also happen faster. They're almost instant, where you, for instance, have a cigarette and you're caught and you want to smoke, or you want to have a drink and you keep drinking. And it happens fast, and this becomes a need. Whereas habits are something that happens slower. It's something you need to practice. You need your subconscious and your conscious mind to click into it. Okay? So in an addiction, you will actually sacrifice somebody else's life out of an obligation to really pursue a practice of substance or practice of habit. So it's not a habit anymore. Then it becomes an addiction, because one of the biggest hallmarks that we can find with addiction is denial. And then if you're denying that you're an alcoholic, if you deny that you are overeating or have an eating disorder, or you deny any of these obsessive behavioral patterns, addiction also you can't really cope with psychologically. A habit you can. You can make a choice. You can say with a habit, okay, I'm going to stop smoking, okay? And if you can't stop smoking and you just keep going back to it, then it's an addiction. But a habit is about an option. You want to go to the gym Monday to Sunday and your job changes. You can go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and do something else on the other days. That's about choices. When you are addicted, you can't find the space to do that. So
Agree.
another thing is both habits and addictions are repeated patterns that we have or repeated behaviors that we have. But behaviors of habits are more often positive more than negative, but they can be both. You can have good habits and bad habits. Addictions are always a negative influence. So there's a difference there. And when you have this, you have 3 areas that we are going to be connected to for both habits and for addictions. You need a trigger, you need a routine, and you need a reward. So let's discuss trigger, routine, and reward. How do you feel about that when it comes to habits and addictions?
Honestly, because if there is a positive reward at the end, it instills the routine, right?
Correct.
And therefore, it enforces that habit itself. I personally would think that an addiction is basically considered a bad habit that stops you from the journey of progressing towards a better you.
Absolutely.
But a good habit in a sense, it moves you towards your goal and your destination. The key is which one, how do you differentiate what is a good and what is a bad habit then? At the end of the day, it's whether or not you become better, whether or not your overall well-being and your performance becomes better itself, then that's when you know whether the habit is essential.
Correct. So it's about being able to differentiate what is good for you, what serves you best, and you can't do that unless you have good boundaries. When you're starting to fail, and when you're starting to feel like you are not coping, when you're overwhelmed with a habit that has manifested, that is the time for you to sit back and say, right, what can I do to modify this habit? Then it will come from a bad habit to a good habit. Okay? Nail biting is an example. Okay? But something has triggered, and that's what I was talking about, the trigger, in the 3 steps of getting to having a habit. So when you have a trigger, the trigger could be anxiety, and that's why you're biting your nails. It doesn't have to be something specific like seeing a color that sets you off or seeing someone that looks like somebody you don't like. These habits could come completely, and I'm talking about more the bad habits now, from a psychological point of view of feeling negativity or overwhelmed.
Yeah, so that habit in that sense, in that situation, it would be a response towards the emotions that you're feeling.
Correct.
Right? Because I feel nervous, therefore my habit comes out. Correct. I feel stressed, therefore my habit comes out. So your habit is a byproduct of the emotions that are going in within you. So Avra, let me ask you then, with regards to bad habits, how long do you think it takes to break a bad habit? How long do you think it takes to form a good habit then?
You know, Yuko, this is actually a very interesting point, because it's only in recent studies that the answer you're looking for has actually been scientifically, let's say, proven through trials and tests.
Oh, okay.
So every single one of us grew up saying, takes 21 days to make a habit, takes 21 days to break a habit. You go on coaching courses. Now, there's a lady by the name of Wendy Wood. She's a author and world-leading expert, and she has written a few books. And the one book that she has written is The Science of Good and Bad Habits. She has her master's in habits, which is very interesting. And she's done a lot of case studies, and she's saying it takes more than 21 days to form a habit or to break a habit. She says that it actually takes 3 months to achieve this.
Oh, a quarter of a year.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's 3 times the amount of time we were taught since young.
Exactly.
Instead of 21 days.
So if you're retraining the subconscious like in NLP, it will take 28 days to formulate some form of pattern. Okay, but that's not a habit. That's just a pattern. Like when you're doing anchoring, it can take 28 days. And prior to that, you've still got to put it together and continue to do it for another 2-3 months for it to actually settle. So we know we're all looking for a quick fix.
Yes, that's what junk food are for. Yes, but waiting 2-3 months to achieve a habit, then that means the habits really take a lot of disciplines
Absolutely.
to instill that behavior.
Yeah. And it's not just about behavior, it's about physically as well. For example, if you take someone who's an athlete, okay, or a swimmer, it's in 21 days, they're not ready to do the Olympic Games, are they? Takes a lot of practice, and they have to have a habit of going to that pool every single day and swimming they have a system that they practice, and they go over and over and over until their bodies are strong enough. If you want to learn to walk for an hour at a certain speed, you've got to practice that, and that can take up to 3 months. So habit and practice, I think, also links a lot.
Yes. So it's not just about your willpower. It's not just about your willpower and your self-control that actually makes the habit itself. It takes that practice.
Yes. So that's physical behavior, where you are eating or drinking or exercising or resting. And then you've got productivity behavior, where there's routines, there's processes, and there's procedures. And then you've got your mental behavior, where there's positive thinking and mindset and being mindful and aware. Willpower and self-control will not necessarily make good and bad habits. It's practice that does it. It's a repetitive pattern.
So we have to definitely practice good habits in order to, make sure that we reap the benefits of it. I actually went to think about what is the benefits of having habits. I mean, good habits in a sense, right? So there are 3 different areas too, other than the behaviors that you mentioned. They also correlate with your behavior. Productivity behavior, that actually instills of our physical well-being, right? Actually, let me rephrase that. Honestly, productivity behavior, it actually instills our physical well-being. So it improves our self-management and organizational skills when we instill routines and processes and procedures that gives us a structure.
Exactly.
Right? And habits also improve our emotional well-being by bringing that sense of familiarity and a reminder of our comfort zone of what feels good to us that we constantly go back to. And that emotional well-being is actually instilled through our mental behavior, like what you mentioned, positive thinking, positive mindset, until it becomes something that's familiar and comfortable to us. As well as the third benefit of habits would be to improve our relational well-being. When we actually have good habits of self-awareness, like we know more about ourselves, we also understand more about how other people behave and their personality, then that does help us in conducting activities with other people, like going out for meals together, right? Over the table, you can observe what other people's habits are. You observe what your own habits are too. And that improves your relationship altogether.
Yes. And that's for good habits. For bad habits, it could highlight areas that you need boundaries for.
Bad habits, one word, boundaries and eradication.
Yes.
Over time.
Yeah.
Over time.
Yeah. So
when it comes to habits, Avra.
Yeah.
Instead of struggling with like a bad habit or struggling with like trying to form a good habit, how do we actually, bring ourselves together to make sure we can actually achieve that habit at the end of the day? What do you think?
I think your very first thought should be about what you choose to change. Because you can't change other people, you can only change yourself. So if you've got something that's not serving you well, it would be your first thing to do would be to choose what you're going to change. And then create a routine that you are doing this over and over again, once again, back into routine. And make it something that's easier to cope with, that's easy to repeat. Don't make it something that you can't achieve. Make it achievable to begin with. You can up those goals and make them slightly more as you go along, but you really want to make it something that is achievable to start with. And remember to accept the unknown, adapt and adopt, because shit happens.
Truth, reality, hashtag.
And then you can return to what it is that you want to achieve to do, because better habits lead to better lives. If you're repeating something and you're getting rewarded for it because it's working, it's happening, it's something that is making you feel good, then you are learning a proper habit.
Well, so well said. You have to keep repeating it. You have to keep rewarding the repetition, and then you learn that habit.
I also think it's important that we move towards our goals and our destination. Where do we want to be? Where do we want to go? And it's very important to know that, because one has to live in the moment. One has to be present, but you also have to have some idea of what goal-setting achievements you're wanting to make. And if you've got good habits, then you'll be able to do that. So it moves you towards that great, awesome destination that you're seeking. It's a lovely journey to go on. When you have a bad habit, it stops that journey and it progresses to, like you said earlier, to make you feel better, to get you to be better than yesterday. And this is not about trying to be a perfectionist and pushing ourselves to an extent where we are not even knowing anymore whether we're good, better, best. It's just about having something that is good for us, makes us feel good, and gives us a feeling that we are totally fulfilled.
I think it's a good point that you mentioned in terms of understanding our goal and our direction, and choosing our habits that aligns in that direction. I think so many of us actually think of habits and routines and behaviors as a thing that we should do. Like, how should we do? How should we do this habit? How should we do this routine?
Sure.
How do we do? What do we do? But we seldom ask, why do we have this habit? And knowing your why behind the habit helps you to know that you're making progress towards this end goal.
Or what is your reason for it?
Your motivation and your purpose for having the habit.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, it's like an example. If you want to wake up at 5 o'clock every morning, you start off by setting an alarm clock. And after 2 or 3 months, guess what? You don't need to set that alarm clock anymore. You have what we call an internal body alarm clock. And you wake up because it becomes something that you've set.
It's because your body is...
Yeah, it's the same. Yes. And it's like the same as, like, I do intermittent fasting. And I only eat at certain hours of the day. And I've done that for 2 years. And I'm now so used to it. It's become a habit.
Now that's a habit I really admire, and I don't think I can do that even at my age. My habit is, I'm hungry. That triggers my routine to eat. And when I eat, that's my reward of feeling good after I eat. So
is that a habit?
Fasting, it's a habit.
Is that a habit, or is it an obsession, or is it an addiction?
It's an emotional satisfaction that I respond to.
Oh, I like the way you put that. And
it improves my life.
Okay, so this is really good, because this is something you have to be so careful of with habits. Okay, because your habit could start off as you seeing it as an emotional reward. But what happens? What happens when that changes? And that becomes comfort eating.
Right.
And that grows, and that becomes obsessive eating. You see where I'm going with habits and addictions? And so many people today, Yuko, do not realize eating disorders are addiction. Food is an addiction. You and I both are foodies. We love our food.
Yeah.
Okay? So we need very good boundaries in order to maintain that. I've done it by intermittent fasting. You do it by being a gym bunny. You have found a habit that you can moderate and not let it become an addiction.
That
So,
is such a good saying. Yeah.
so there again, it's about resources. If you have a habit, you've got to also have resources, because shit does happen, excuse the expression. It's going to happen. So you have to be able to say, I'm going to start again tomorrow, and tomorrow's a new day, and reintroduce it.
Yes.
Because
well, every day it's another chance to introduce a new habit or to form, or deconstruct your bad habit.
hope is tomorrow.
What is the hope and the message for today then?
Oh, we need to have a message for the day, don't we? Well, what have we learned? We've learned that the quality of life is determined by the quantity and the quality of your daily habits. Whether they are productivity habits, physical habits, or mental habits, every single one of them will improve your life, and all three of them together, that's physical, mental, and productive, are all going to be put together in what I call the supercharge way in which you behave. So be a little bit more aware of what you're doing and decide, is this a habit? Is it a good habit or a bad habit?
Or is it just an emotional response?
Or is it a reward?
So many possibilities right there.
Because we always look at things from different perspectives.
That's right. And that's why we exist here today, to talk about the topic of habits and bringing you different perspectives on the topic of habits. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe and also check us out in the description below to receive a message for the day.
Well, I suppose that's a wrap for today. I'm signing off with love and light, and we'll see you soon. Let's have more chats about perspective.
Peace out. That's my habit.
What is your habit?
Saying peace out.
And why is that a habit?
Emotional response.
Love it. Cheers.